Welcome to the most foul true crime. From notorious criminals and unsolved mysteries to chilling tales of deceit and murder, we bring you the most compelling and detailed stories from around the globe. Today, in no particular order, we explore the twisted minds and heinous acts of some of the most prolific African serial killers. Naceur Damergi, also known as the Butcher of Nabeul or the Slaughterer of Nabeul. Naceur Damergi was born in 1944 in Tunis, Tunisia, during the French occupation. He was the illegitimate son of a young man from the Zagwan countryside and a prostitute named Huria. After his mother was imprisoned for soliciting, she married a farmer and registered Damergi under her husband's name. Damergi did not meet his biological father until he was 30 years old. Despite his troubled beginnings, he was described as intelligent and fluent in French. He studied at the Bourguiba Children's School but later left to work in agriculture, where he found financial success. Damergi's criminal activities began in the late 1980s. His first known victim was a child named Muhammad Ali, whom he murdered on 15 June 1987. Damergi lured Ali to his farm under the pretense of helping with the harvest. When Ali resisted Damergi's advances, Damergi strangled him and buried his body on the farm. This marked the beginning of a series of gruesome crimes. Over the next year, Damergi honed his method of luring children to his farm, where he would rape and murder them. By the time of his arrest, he had killed 14 minors, ranging in age from 10 to 18 years. Before Damergi's apprehension, many suspects were arrested, including Damergi himself, who was initially released due to lack of evidence. However, he was arrested again on 27 November 1989 after a routine traffic stop led to the discovery of a bloody knife in his possession. Following his arrest, Damergi confessed to the murders, and the bodies of 12 victims were found buried in a nearby forest. Damergi's trial was a significant event in Tunisia. Lawyers in the country refused to defend him, so the court assigned a lawyer to his case. On 24 May 1990, he was convicted of multiple counts of murder and rape and sentenced to death. His request for clemency was denied by President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. On 17 November 1990, Damergi was executed by hanging at Naceur prison in Tunis. His executioner later recalled that it took 13 minutes for Damergi to die, rather than the usual 4 or 5 minutes. Naceur Damergi's case remains one of the most notorious in Tunisia's criminal history. His brutal crimes and the subsequent trial and execution had a profound impact on the country. The case highlighted issues related to child safety and the effectiveness of law enforcement in dealing with serial crimes. In 2023, his story inspired Karim Beruma to create the film Even God Won't Forgive, further cementing Damergi's infamy. Milton Sipalo, also known as the Lusaka Strangler. Milton Mufungulwa Sipalo, also known as the Lusaka Strangler, was born in Zambia. Details about his early life are limited, but he was known to have a military background, which later helped him evade detention for a significant period. Sipalo's criminal activities began in January 1980 and continued until his capture in September 1980. He is credited with being the most prolific Zambian serial killer, responsible for the murders of 29 women and girls within a span of just 9 months. His modus operandi involved luring victims from public areas such as bus terminals and railway stations to secluded locations where he would rape and strangle them. Many of his victims were found with strange mucus or foam oozing from their noses, suggesting the possible use of chemicals during his attacks. The investigation into the Lusaka Strangler's crimes was a significant challenge for the Zambian police, who were under immense pressure to solve the case. The public's fear and frustration grew as the body count rose. The police launched Operation Rosemary, led by Superintendent William Mundia, to capture the killer. A Lusaka-wide curfew was also implemented, and women were frequently advised to avoid strangers offering them rides. Sipalo was finally captured on 16 September 1980, when one of his surviving victims, Josephine Mukatasha, identified him at the Kamwala bus station. He was still wearing Mukatasha's watch, which he had stolen during his attack on her. His military background had helped him evade detection for so long, as he used skills acquired through his training to cover his tracks. Sipalo was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. However, he never stood trial. On 19 September 1980, while being held at the Lusaka Central Police Station, Sipalo managed to escape from the police officers escorting him. He ran to the roof of the police station and jumped off the building, committing suicide. The case of Milton Sipalo, the Lusaka Strangler, remains one of the most notorious in Zambia's criminal history. His brutal crimes and the subsequent investigation had a profound impact on the community, highlighting issues related to public safety and the effectiveness of law enforcement in dealing with serial crimes. The fear and panic he instilled in Lusaka during his reign of terror are still remembered today. Ramadan Abdel Rehim Mansour, also known as Al-Tourbini. Ramadan Abdel Rehim Mansour, also known as Al-Tourbini, was born around 1980 in Tanta, Garbia, Egypt. He left home at an early age and joined a street gang, where he learned survival skills under harsh conditions. Gang leaders reportedly cut him with razors whenever he made mistakes, which may have contributed to his violent tendencies. Mansour's killing spree spanned from 2004 to 2006. He targeted street children, luring them onto the roofs of train carriages with promises of food or shelter. Once there, he and his gang members would strip, rape, and torture the children before throwing them off the moving trains and dumping their bodies in the Nile River. Mansour claimed to have been possessed by a female jinn who commanded him to commit these crimes. Mansour was arrested on 29 November 2006 after two of his gang members were apprehended and provided information about his activities. He confessed to raping and murdering at least 32 children and youth, most of whom were boys aged between 10 and 14. His crimes were committed across several locations in Egypt, including Cairo, Alexandria, Kalubaya, and Beni Suef. In 2007, Mansour and his accomplice Farag Samir Mahmoud, also known as Hanata, were convicted and sentenced to death by the criminal court in Tanta. Mansour and Mahmoud were executed by hanging at Burj Al Arab prison on 16 December 2010. 5 other accomplices received prison sentences ranging from 3 to 40 years. Ramadan Abdel Rehim Mansour's case remains one of the most notorious in Egyptian history. His brutal methods and the sheer number of his victims left a lasting impact on the nation. His crimes highlighted the vulnerabilities of street children and the need for better protection and support for marginalized individuals. Denis Kazungu. Denis Kazungu was born around 1989 in Rwanda. Details about his early life are limited, but he was known to run a motorcycle spare parts shop at the time of his arrest. Kazungu's criminal activities came to light between 2022 and 2023. He rented a house in Kashikiri in the Kanombe sector of Kikukiro district, Kigali, where he lured his victims, most of whom were women. He would bring them to his home where he raped, robbed, and ultimately murdered them. At least 3 women managed to escape from his clutches. Kazungu was first arrested in July 2023 on suspicion of rape, robbery, theft, and use of threats, but was granted bail due to lack of evidence. On 5 September 2023, he was arrested again after police discovered the bodies of 14 victims buried in a hole in the kitchen of his rented house. His arrest followed a report from his landlord about defaulting on rent payments for 7 months. During his trial, Kazungu pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including the murder of 12 women and 2 men. He claimed that his victims had deliberately infected him with AIDS, although he provided no proof for his allegation. On 8 March 2024, Kazungu was sentenced to life imprisonment. The case of Denis Kazungu shocked Rwanda and drew significant media attention. It highlighted issues related to violence against women and the effectiveness of law enforcement in handling serial crimes. His conviction brought some closure to the families of the victims, but the case remains a grim reminder of the dangers that still exist. Abdelaâli ben Brahim ben Mubarak Hadi, also known as the Butcher of Taroudant. Abdelaâli ben Brahim ben Mubarak Hadi was born in 1962 in Taroudant, Morocco. He came from a modest family. His father was a bread baker. Hadi dropped out of school at the age of 11. After his mother's death, he moved to the Bensargao district of Agadir, where he worked as a night watchman. At the age of 14, Hadi was gang raped by a group of street thugs, a traumatic event that significantly impacted his life. He returned to Taroudant at the age of 16. Hadi's killing spree spanned from 2000 to 2004. He targeted boys and young men aged between 11 and 16. Hadi would lure his victims, often street children, with promises of work or food. Once he had them in a secluded area, he would rape, then suffocate them. He buried the bodies in shallow graves in the Taroudant Valley. On 20 August 2004, local residents discovered human remains, including multiple skeletons and 8 skulls, scattered throughout the Taroudant Valley. An autopsy report determined that the victims were adolescents who had died at least 6 months prior to the discovery. DNA collected from the soil samples at the crime scene was matched to the parents of 3 of the deceased children, leading to the identification of some victims. Hadi was apprehended on 7 August 2004. Investigators found a piece of paper next to a collection of skulls that contained a poem with cryptic references, including the name Hadi. This clue led them to Najib Hadi, an employee at a nearby road station, who revealed that his brother Abdelaâli also worked at the station. When police arrived at Abdelaâli's house, he greeted them by saying, "I have been waiting for you to save me from my torture." He confessed to the murders and the sexual abuse of his victims. Hadi was sentenced to death on 2 December 2004. He was convicted of premeditated serial assassinations, use of arms, torture, violence, rape of minors, kidnapping, and sequestration of minors. He was executed on 6 May 2022. Abdelaâli Hadi's case remains one of the most notorious in Moroccan history. His brutal methods and the sheer number of his victims left a lasting impact on the nation. His crimes highlighted the vulnerabilities of street children and the importance of thorough investigative work. Charles Kwabena Ebo Quansah, also known as the Accra Strangler. Charles Papa Kwabena Ebo Quansah was born in 1964 in Ghana. Details about his early life are sparse. but it is known that he had a troubled upbringing, which may have contributed to his later criminal behavior. Quansah's criminal activities began with violent crimes including rape and robbery. In 1986, he was jailed for rape, and after his release, he committed another rape, leading to a 3-year prison sentence in 1987. He was also imprisoned for robbery in 1996. His series of murders began in 1993, targeting women, often food sellers or sex workers, who were found strangled, raped, and mutilated. The killings created widespread fear and panic in Accra. Quansah was initially arrested in February 2000 for the murder of his then-girlfriend Joyce Boateng. While in custody, he was charged with the murder of another woman, Akua Serwa, and subsequently confessed to the strangulation deaths of 8 more women. The investigation drew international attention, with the FBI becoming involved. Quansah's trial began on 11 July 2002 at the High Court Criminal Sessions in Accra. He was convicted of the murders and sentenced to death by hanging. Despite his conviction, Quansah had maintained his innocence, claiming he was tortured while in police custody and attributing his actions to the spirits. The case of Charles Quansah had a profound impact on the community and the perception of safety in Accra. It highlighted issues related to violence against women and the effectiveness of law enforcement in handling serial crimes. The case remains one of the most notorious in Ghana's criminal history. David Thabo Simelane, also known as the Swazi serial killer. David Thabo Simelane was born in 1956 in Swaziland, now Eswatini. His early life was marked by hardship and instability. He left school early despite his uncle's efforts to enable him to attend secondary school. Simelane's criminal activities began with a conviction for robbery and rape, for which he had served 6 years in prison. After his release in 1998, he harbored a deep resentment and sought revenge, which led to his series of murders. Simelane's killing spree lasted from late 1980s until 2001. He targeted women, often luring them into the forest under various pretenses. Once there, he would tie them up, sexually assault them, and then either stab or strangle them if they resisted. In many cases, he beheaded his victims either before or after death. Simelane often stole money and valuables from his victims to fund his gambling habits. Among his victims were several pregnant women. The investigation into Simelane's crimes began when shepherds discovered body parts in the Usutu pulp forest in Malkerns. Authorities, with the assistance of South African forensic experts, uncovered more graves, eventually finding 45 bodies, including those of 4 babies. Simelane was arrested on 25 April 2001 near the graves. He led the police to additional graves, resulting in the discovery of more bodies. During his trial, Simelane was charged with 34 murders due to the advanced state of decay of many bodies. He was found guilty of 28 murders and sentenced to death by hanging. Throughout his trial, Simelane showed no remorse for his actions. An appeal to the Swazi Supreme Court in November 2011 confirmed the death sentence, despite concerns about the lengthy trial process. David Thabo Simelane's case remains one of the most notorious in Eswatini's history. His brutal methods and the sheer number of victims left a lasting impact on the nation. His crimes highlighted the importance of forensic science and the need for vigilance in investigating suspicious deaths. Mohammed Adam Omar, also known as the sanitation worker killer. Mohammed Adam Omar, also known as Mohammed Adam Omar Ishaq, was born in 1952 in Sudan. Details about his early life are scant, but it is known that he had witnessed his father murder his mother's lover when he was 7 years old. This traumatic event reportedly led him to harbor a deep mistrust of women. Omar later married a Sudanese woman and had 2 children, but they divorced. He then married a Yemeni woman and moved to Sana'a, Yemen, where he worked as a morgue assistant at Sana'a University. Omar's killing spree spanned from 1995 to 1999, although he claimed to have started killing as early as 1975. He was known as the Sanitation Worker Killer or the Sana'a Ripper due to his gruesome methods and the locations of his crimes. Omar targeted female medical students, luring them to the morgue under the guise of helping them with their studies. Once there, he would kill them with a blow to the head, dismember their bodies, and dissolve them in chemicals. He claimed to have killed 51 women across several countries: Sudan, Kuwait, Chad, Lebanon, Jordan, and the Central African Republic. Omar was arrested in May 2000 after the bodies of 21 female students were found buried on the campus of Sana'a University or hidden in the sewage system. During his detention, he attempted suicide but was unsuccessful. He confessed to raping, killing, and mutilating 5 women initially, but later claimed responsibility for 51 murders. His confessions included detailed descriptions of his methods and motives, although he later recanted some of his statements. Omar was convicted of killing 2 medical students and was sentenced to death. He was executed by firing squad on 20 June 2001 in Sana'a, Yemen. His case caused a significant uproar in Yemen, with public demonstrations demanding justice and accountability from university and security officials. Muhammad Adam Omar's case remains one of the most notorious in the Arab world. His brutal methods and the sheer number of his alleged victims left a lasting impact on the communities affected by his crimes. His case highlighted the importance of thorough investigative work and the need for vigilance in protecting vulnerable individuals. Gracious David West, the Nigerian serial killer. Gracious David West was born in 1980 in Buguma, Rivers State, Nigeria. He had a history of criminality, having joined the Dagbam cult, a violent gang notorious for armed robberies and kidnapping in the Niger Delta region. Though David West renounced his cult membership later in life, his violent tendencies persisted, ultimately leading him down a darker path. David West's killing spree took place between July and September 2019, primarily in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. His victims were young women, often in their 20s, whom he lured to budget hotels with promises of money or companionship. Inside the hotel rooms, he would bind their hands and feet with strips of cloth and strangle them to death, often using pillowcases or other ligatures. His victims were left naked, bound, and lifeless, creating a consistent pattern of murder that helped police identify a serial killer at large. His killing spree spread fear throughout southern Nigeria, particularly in Port Harcourt, though he also murdered women in Lagos, Imo, and Akwa Ibom states. In total, he is believed to have killed at least 15 women, though he later confessed to fewer during his trial. The pattern of hotel murders drew the attention of law enforcement, who launched an investigation with hotel owners and staff. CCTV footage from multiple hotels provided key evidence, showing David West entering with victims and leaving alone. On 19 September 2019, he was arrested while attempting to flee Port Harcourt for Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. During interrogation, he initially confessed to the killings, admitting to multiple murders. David West's trial was highly publicized. He was charged with multiple accounts of murder and initially pleaded guilty to 9 charges. However, he later attempted to retract his confession, claiming it was coerced. Despite his change of plea, the overwhelming evidence, including hotel surveillance footage and witness testimony, led to his conviction. On 9 October 2020, the Rivers State High Court sentenced him to death by hanging, with the presiding judge, Justice Adolphus Enebeli, citing the premeditated and cruel nature of his crimes. David West's crimes left a lasting impact on Nigerian society. Hotels across the country responded by implementing stricter security protocols, including better guest identification and surveillance systems. His killing spree also raised awareness about the vulnerability of women, particularly in public spaces like hotels, sparking public discourse on gender-based violence. Women's rights groups used the case to advocate for stronger protections for women and improved law enforcement. Gracious David West's legacy is one of terror and vigilance. His actions forever altered the public's perception of safety, especially for women, and left an indelible mark on the country. Though his execution brought closure, the fear his crimes instilled continues to resonate across Nigeria.
Yes, so what happened when you
So after that, we went to the hotel.
Yes.
I paid for the place. So they took her to the hall. So after they took her, I said, okay, let me look for you to arrange for food. I should eat myself. So they prepared food and we ate. So after that, we slept till when the day broke by around that 5:30. Yes, 5:30 to let's say 4 or 5:30. So I brought out a knife. She didn't actually know that there was a knife there. So I brought out a knife. That threatened her that I don't shout. Then she shouted and we used the knife on her. So without fear, she couldn't shout. And by then the television, the volume was
Loud.
Yes, loud. So she kept quiet, and after that, I used the wrapper to tie her heads from the back, then tie her legs.
Which rapper?
Pillowcase.
Okay.
Bulelani Mabhayi, also known as the Monster of Tholeni. Bulelani Mabhayi was born in 1974 in South Africa. Details about his early life are sparse, but he grew up in the Eastern Cape region. Mabhayi's background and upbringing remain largely undocumented, which is not uncommon for many serial killers whose early lives are often marked by hardship and instability. Mabhayi's killing spree began in May 2007 and continued until August 2012. He targeted women and children in the village of Tholeni in the Eastern Cape. His modus operandi involved breaking into homes at night where there were no men present. Mabhayi would then rape some of his victims before killing them with an axe or panga, a type of machete. His youngest victim was just 14 months old and his oldest was 79 years old. The investigation into Mabhayi's crimes was challenging due to the remote and rural nature of Tholeni. In May 2010, local men over the age of 16 were tested and their fingerprints were taken. Mabhayi avoided this by not having identification with him at the time. He was eventually caught when he left a shoe at one of the crime scenes. A saliva sample was taken in 2010 was crucial in identifying him. Mabhayi was found guilty of 20 counts of murder, 6 counts of rape, and 10 counts of burglary. On 3 September 2013, he was sentenced to 25 years to life imprisonment. During his trial, Mabhayi showed little remorse for his actions. Bulelani Mabhayi's case remains one of the most notorious in South Africa's history. His brutal methods and the sheer number of his victims left a lasting impact on the community of Tholeni and the nation as a whole. His crimes highlighted the vulnerabilities of rural communities and the importance of thorough investigative work. And there you have it, the top 10 most prolific African serial killers. These stories remind us of the fragility of life and the depths of human depravity. By understanding these dark chapters of history, we hope to shed light on the importance of vigilance in justice. Thank you for tuning in to The Most Foul True Crime. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments below or on any of our social media platforms at The Most Foul True Crime.